Remember, I'm a Navy SEAL. He struck her once. She dropped him cold in front of 1,040 troops. 1,040 troops stood in formation beneath the blazing sun. Boots aligned, shoulders squared, silence heavy. It was supposed to be a demonstration, controlled combat, discipline on display, a reminder of strength and hierarchy. At the center of the field stood a Navy SEAL, decorated, confident, battle-tested. His presence alone commanded attention. Whispers moved quietly through the ranks. Everyone knew his reputation. He was the kind of operator recruits dreamed of becoming. Across from him stood a woman, calm, composed, expression unreadable. Most of the troops assumed she was there to demonstrate technique, maybe assist, maybe observe. They were wrong. The instructor announced the drill, controlled hand-to-hand engagement, strict rules, measured force. The SEAL smirked slightly. He stepped forward and leaned just close enough for those near the front to hear. "Remember," he said quietly, but with edge, "I'm a Navy SEAL." It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. The signal was given. They circled, boots scraping gravel, wind moving across the open field. 1,040 soldiers watching without blinking. She moved first, light on her feet, balanced, reading him. He tested her distance, a quick feint, a probing strike. She countered smoothly. A murmur moved through the formation. He adjusted. Then it happened. A single sharp strike, faster than expected, snapping across her guard. The sound echoed. Gasps. The blow wasn't brutal, but it was real, hard enough to make a statement. For a split second, time froze. Dust lifted around their boots. The SEAL stepped back half a pace, confident the message had been delivered. Across the formation, some troops nodded, others shifted slightly. It looked decided. But she didn't fall. She didn't stagger. She didn't even blink. Slowly, she straightened, her breathing steady, eyes locked onto his. Something changed in the air. Not anger, not embarrassment. Control. The kind of control that doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself. The SEAL saw it too. His smirk faded, because in that moment he realized something critical. He hadn't struck a demonstration partner. He had struck someone who had been waiting for him to overcommit, waiting for certainty to turn into exposure. And 1,040 troops were about to witness something none of them would forget. Narrator. The next 3 seconds would shatter assumptions, silence whispers, and prove that reputation means nothing when skill meets precision. The strike still echoed in the air. 1,040 troops stood frozen, eyes locked on the center of the field. The Navy SEAL adjusted his stance, confidence still visible. He had made his point, fast, clean, controlled. But she hadn't moved, not backward, not away, forward. Just one small step, subtle, calculated. To most watching, it meant nothing. To him, it meant everything. He reset his guard, tightening his shoulders. He'd felt the shift, the energy, the quiet recalibration. She exhaled once, and then the world compressed into motion. Her lead hand snapped out, not to strike, but to redirect. His guard shifted instinctively to block high. That was the mistake. Her hips rotated sharply, a low pivot, clean foot placement, perfect angle. Before the crowd even registered movement, her elbow cut across her center line. Short, precise, devastating.
His balance broke instantly. An intake of breath rippled through the formation. He tried to recover, instinct kicking in, but she was already inside his frame. One hand trapped his wrist, a sharp downward torque, then impact. He hit the ground hard, flat, cold. Dust burst upward around him. The silence that followed was heavier than the strike had been. 1,040 troops stared in disbelief. The decorated Navy SEAL, the man who had just reminded everyone who he was, lay motionless on his back, staring at the sky. Not unconscious, but stunned. Not injured, but completely dismantled. She stepped back immediately. No celebration, no smirk, no lingering dominance, just control. Absolute control. The instructors near the sideline exchanged glances. They expected skill. They had not expected that. The SEAL blinked once, twice, then reality settled in. He hadn't been overpowered. He'd been outread, outpositioned, outtimed. He slowly rolled to his side and pushed himself up, boots grinding into gravel. Across the ranks, something shifted. Respect. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the permanent kind. She stood waiting, calm, composed, breathing steady. Not as someone who had won, but as someone who had simply executed. The SEAL met her eyes. No anger, no ego, just understanding. He gave a single nod, and that nod said more than any rank ever could. Narrator. In 3 seconds, reputation had collided with reality, and in front of 1,040 troops, certainty had been snapped clean in half.
The dust settled slowly around them. 1,040 troops remained in formation, but the energy was no longer the same. It had shifted from anticipation to realization. The Navy SEAL stood upright now. His chest rose and fell once, steadying. The sting in his ribs was fading, but something else had taken its place. Clarity. He replayed the exchange in his mind. The redirect, the angle change, the elbow, the wrist control. There had been no wasted motion, no aggression, just execution. He had walked into the trap willingly. Across from him, she remained composed. No victory stance, no show of dominance. She simply waited, as if allowing the moment to breathe. The commanding officer stepped forward slightly, unsure whether to reset the drill or dismiss the formation. But before he could speak, the Navy SEAL raised a hand, not to protest, not to defend his pride, to address the troops. He turned slowly toward the 1,040 soldiers watching. "Listen carefully," he said, voice strong but measured. "I said, remember, I'm a Navy SEAL." A few subtle shifts in formation. He nodded once toward her. "And she reminded me that titles don't win fights." The words landed heavier than the impact had. He continued, "Skill wins fights, discipline wins fights, control wins fights." His gaze swept across the formation. "And if you ever rely on reputation instead of readiness, you'll learn the same lesson." There was no bitterness in his tone, only respect. He turned back toward her and extended his hand. She accepted it without hesitation, firm, equal, final. The handshake wasn't symbolic, it was acknowledgement. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't clap. They stood taller, because what they had witnessed wasn't humiliation, it was leadership. The SEAL stepped back into position beside her, not in front, beside. The message was unmistakable. Strength isn't loud, authority isn't declared, and confidence without humility is a weakness waiting to be exposed. The field remained silent, not awkward, not tense, respectful. The commanding officer stepped forward at last, boots firm against gravel. His eyes moved from the Navy SEAL to the woman who'd dropped him clean in 3 seconds. He didn't smile, he didn't dramatize it, he simply spoke. "What you witnessed today," he said,
voice carrying across all 1,040 troops, is the difference between confidence and mastery. No one shifted, no one blinked. The SEAL stood tall, shoulders squared, pride intact but refined. Beside him, she stood exactly the same way she had before the fight began, calm, unmoved, unshaken. The officer continued, "For today's demonstration, you'll be leading advanced close combat instruction for the next rotation." A quiet ripple moved through the ranks, not shock, recognition. The SEAL looked at her, not surprised, just approving. He had felt her timing, her balance, her restraint, and he knew the troops would benefit from it. She gave a single nod in acknowledgement of the assignment, no celebration, no speech, because leaders don't need applause, they need responsibility. The formation was dismissed. Boots pivoted in unison, but as the troops marched away, the moment lingered. They would remember the sound of that strike. They would remember the thud against the ground. But more than that, they would remember the humility, the handshake, the correction. The field slowly emptied, leaving only dust drifting in golden light. The SEAL approached her one final time. "You're good," he said simply. She met his eyes. "So are you." No tension, no rivalry, only mutual respect forged in seconds. And in front of 1,040 troops, a strike had been answered. But more importantly, ego had been replaced with respect. But the final lesson wasn't over yet, because the commanding officer was about to make a decision that would echo across the entire base. And that day, in front of 1,040 troops, a lesson was written into memory. Strength without humility is fragile, but mastery, controlled and quiet, is unstoppable. This is United War, where moments define warriors.